Trevor Matich, our Washington Redskins analyst and Emmy Award-winning host of Comcast Sportsnet. He joins us now. And, yeah, the Redskins lost 45-21, and RG3 had to leave the game with an injury. We will get to that in a minute, and we'll get the latest about RG3 from Trevor Matich in a moment. But, Trevor, thanks for joining us this morning. It's Mike Shanahan's return to the Mile High Stadium. Halfway through the third quarter, he's up by 2 touchdowns, 21-7. I mean, This looked great. What in God's name happened next?
I don't know. It was such a blur what happened next. And really what it came down to is that the offense became all of a sudden incredibly inept. And that just put Peyton Manning back on the field with the defense being not having a chance to rest. And Peyton Manning took advantage. I mean, the defense for the first 3 quarters was magnificent. But the offense in the second half abandoned the run. The play calling, in my opinion, was really suspect, and that turned into a second half that was inept to the point that in the fourth quarter, 5 of their last 6 drives ended in turnovers, and the other drive was a 3-and-out. And so the Redskins' offense just disappeared.
Well, this is the question. You have said this before. You have said that the play calling was very suspect. I can't count on my hands the number of times during this season I've heard you say that. And I think you're right. So what does it take for somebody to sort of say, the emperor has no clothes here, the play calling is not what it should be?
Well, you just said it, Brian, and truthfully, I would like that explanation, and I haven't heard it yet. Whether they allow Kyle Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, to step out and talk about it, or Mike Shanahan, the head coach, does. There were 2 things about the play calling today that I'd like an explanation for. And maybe there is an explanation, but I can't figure it out as we speak this morning. The first thing is, why in the world did they abandon the run in the second half? In the first half, there was about a 50-50 split between pass and run calls. In the second half, they passed it 22 times. They ran it 9 times. They got away from the run. As a matter of fact, when they took that 14-point lead you talked about, the next 3 drives, the Redskins only had 1 run call. Now, you can say that the Broncos had something to do with that because they brought extra players up close to the line of scrimmage to stop the run, and that caused the Redskins to check into passing plays. Even so, there are times when you just need to keep feeding the ball to the hot hand, and that was Alfred Morris, who averaged 5.5 yards per carry. Mm-hmm. And when they do that and bring up extra numbers, your passing game should be more effective than it was.
Oh, yeah. Their running game looked great yesterday. It really did. All right, so, Trevor, what happened to RG3? We all saw him have to leave the game. He was hobbled a little bit. What happened, and how is he?
Well, 2 things happened. First of all, RG3 was just horrible. Remember against the Cowboys a couple of weeks ago, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn from the inside.
Yeah, but against the Bears last week, he looked great.
He completed 62% of his passes against a depleted defense. Well, everybody's completing a lot of passes against the Denver defense, and RG3 only was 50%. Now, there's a couple of things. The first was inaccuracy. You remember that spectacular one-handed catch by Pierre Garçon in the first half? Mm-hmm. That was awesome. I mean, he jumped up in the air, full extension, stabbed one hand as high as he could, caught that ball with one hand. Well, guess what? He was 8 yards down the field and wide open. Why in the world is RG3 making him make a catch like that? Well, he was inaccurate. He couldn't throw the ball to a wide-open receiver 8 yards down the field and make it routine.
Well, all right, but I also saw him hit Santana Moss in the shoulder pads a few times. I mean, he put the ball right on the numbers, and Moss couldn't hang on to it.
That's right, and Aldrick Robinson also dropped the pass. So the plays that were there to be had, between the receivers dropping them and RG3 missing them, that hurt them. The other thing was this, something we've also talked about, and that is, why in the world did they not roll out RG3? He was hit on over half the times he threw the ball. But most of the time, that was from the pocket. Right?
He stayed in the pocket, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and so he was magnificently courageous, physically taking hits and standing in the pocket. But as the game wore on, I kept on asking myself, why don't you roll him out to pass? Why don't you run a bootleg to get him outside of the pocket before he passes?
Right.
And you can say that the defense was trying to contain him, but there are ways offensively that you can get him outside anyway. And the Redskins didn't even attempt to do it, and he kept getting hit and hit and hit.
So
it wasn't all his fault, but it added up to an inept passing game.
So here's my question, and I'm going to stir up a little trouble here. I mean, I've said this before. He's not living up to expectations. It may be because his knee really is not fully healed, but when he went out in the fourth quarter with possibly an injury to his other knee, which turned out to be okay, we understand it's not an issue, but they didn't know for a little while. They took him over, they went to check him out, and they put Kirk Cousins in there. Didn't have a particularly good game, but I'm wondering if Shanahan's thought was, there was a little sideline conversation. You can see RG3 go over and have a conversation with Shanahan and say, I'm okay, I can go back in. And Shanahan shook his head, said, no, man, sit it out. You know, this game's lost, or whatever he said.
He's out of hand at that point.
Do you think, though, that he wanted to see how Kirk Cousins would play?
I think that's part of it, but more than that, right now, politically, there's just no way they can go with Cousins. They just can't do it.
Oh, you know what? They can. They can make the argument that he's not winning.
Not after a 75-yard pick six on his first series coming in.
Well, okay, but he's coming in cold, okay?
And the game was already out of hand.
Listen, I'm not sure that Kirk Cousins is the answer, but it seems pretty clear when you look at the record so far this year that RG3 is not the answer.
Well, RG3 combined with the play calling this year, which, by the way, the play calling last year was excellent. It was creative. You don't see the same creativity. It's not just that they have not adjusted to defensive adjustments. It's that the Redskins' play calling has regressed from last year, and it went from being relatively creative to being incredibly mundane. But I don't know that Cousins would do any better with that play calling, but really the reality is this is RG3's team.
Listen.
They gave up the world in trading high draft picks to get him. They've got to let him play through this. That's
I think they're treating him with kid gloves, and if it was anybody else, he would already been pulled by now.
Well,
And I don't think that he's getting the job done.
Listen, the Redskins, this was always going to be a tough game. The Broncos are possibly the best team in the league, playing on the road in their house. It was going to be a tough game at the beginning. And the good news here, Redskins fans, is that the two teams we're looking up at, Dallas Cowboys, they lost to the Detroit Lions, a very dramatic game yesterday, and the Eagles lost to the lowly New York Giants. So even though the Redskins lost, they actually didn't lose any ground in the division. Looking forward, Trevor, they still have a window, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it looks like the winner of this division will be the least inept team, and that's another reason to let
That's what we're going for.
I mean, they're not losing ground.
We're not as inept as the other guy.
That's the battle cry. All right, Trevor, always good to have you. We will talk to you on Friday before this Sunday's game.
All right, thanks, guys.
Trevor Matich, you can hear he's kind of downhearted, isn't he? Sort of crestfallen.
And who wouldn't?
We had the game. It was 21-7 in the third quarter. 38 straight points later, Redskins